Welcome back. We will now start the scene-setting conversation. Moderating this session is Mr. Minoru Takada, Team Leader for Energy at the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs, or UNDESA. Please come onto the stage. Headquarters Officer of Shimokawa Town in Hokkaido Prefecture, Japan. Ms. Suzuka Nakamura, environmental activist in Japan. Mr. Barisunga Akilmali Trezor, Africa Coordinator of the Climate Change Africa Opportunity, CCAO. Mr. Kulwant Singh, as the CEO of 3R Waste Foundation of Gurugram, India. Ms. Yumiko Kajiwara of the Corporate Executive Officer, EVP, and Chief Sustainability Officer of Fujitsu and representing WBCSD Japan. Ms. Yu Jong Kim, Senior Sustainable Development Officer of UN Office of Sustainable Development, UNOSD. And last but not least, Ms. Lynn M. Wagner, Senior Director of Tracking Progress, International Institute for Sustainable Development, IISD, who is joining us online. Over to you, Mr. Takada.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I learned to do this one, and after lunch all the time, whenever I go to the meeting, we get a bit bored and sleepy, so we do this sort of greeting all the time. Thank you very much. I'm not sure whether Lynn is online. Lynn, are you online? Can you say a few words?
Yes, I am. Hi.
Hi, Lynn. Hi, how are you? Thank you very much. And then I know that you're covering the event as well. Thank you very much always.
Yes.
IISD, global reporting services. Really appreciate it very much. Look, this session is very simple. As a moderator, this is very simple because I'm going to shut up and be able to just listen to the perspective from the panelists. Now, but let me say also a few words just to get started. Why we started this conference, right? Basically. On one hand, we have SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals. Remember that, the document that describes Sustainable Development Goals that was adopted by the UN General Assembly in 2015. There's a title there. I don't know whether you realize it. Title is called The Future We Want. So the future we want, if you put that in goals and targets, then there's this very long list of the goals and targets that essentially have become Sustainable Development Goals. You know how many goals, you know how many targets. If you know how many indicators, you can actually come and work at the United Nations, but you don't need to know it. But there's tons of those things. So on one hand, we know where we want to go. At least we knew where we wanted to go by 2030 by describing this list of goals and targets called Sustainable Development Goals. And then in the same year, another landmark agreement was made, the Paris Agreement on Climate Change. Then you know why we have to tackle this climate change challenges. Climate change is a very big threat, and probably the biggest threat in our society at this point in time in terms of long-term sustainability. But then if you look at action to address climate change, that gives us a lot of opportunities as well. That is why if you really want to have the future we want, perhaps, if we design climate action in such a way to be able to advance both sustainable development goals while also putting ourselves on track toward net zero emissions to create a resilient society by this mid-century, we may be able to create win-win situation, not for me and for the panelists only, but for all the people, particularly for the younger generations. So that's the reason why that we started thinking about, okay, maybe we have to work on both SDGs, which covers so many issues, plus climate action. Why UN Department of Economic and Social Affairs and the UN Climate Change Convention Secretariat? Climate Change Convention Secretariat carries the name of climate change, so I don't have to explain that. But in UN Department of Economic Social Affairs, at the United Nations, UN has a process called UN General Assembly. You know very well about General Assembly, at least you have heard about it. Member states meet in General Assembly to discuss global affairs, global issues. When it comes to sustainable development goals, there's a process called United Nations High-Level Political Forum. This is where member states and all other stakeholders come together every July in New York to look at where we stand on the progress toward SDGs, what are the remaining challenges toward SDG achievement, and then resolve to move forward. Secretariat for that process is sitting in that building called the UN Secretariat. In charge of that is called Department of Economic and Social Affairs, which is where I sit, and my colleagues from New York actually are here today to support that process. So that's why we thought UNDESA, who is supporting the progress tracking of the Sustainable Development Goals on one hand, UNFCCC Secretariat, which is supporting the process of tackling climate change, can come together and at least sort of discuss challenges and opportunity to bring SDG action and climate action together. So that's the origin of this conference, which happened first time in 2019. Last couple of years, we have been doing online consultation. This is the third one, but effectively in person, this is the second time. I'm very glad that for several people who brought actually this conference together, Professor Takeuchi, who is sitting sort of in front of us, official from the Ministry of Environment in Japan, and many other people who are sitting here. So I really would like to thank on behalf of DES and the UNFCCC Secretariat for making this conference possible because of their sort of foresight, those things. But the reason why we're here today has a special meaning. Japan has been actually implementing this sort of synergetic action. So we wanted to learn as a United Nations so we can spread the word. You are doing a great things. We have seen this morning a lot of great examples coming from within Japan. Not only in Japan, there are many things happening outside Japan, in Asia and the Pacific, around the world. So from now onward, we'll be hearing a lot more perspective and experiences coming from around the world, from all stakeholders. Some of them are represented here. So we'll be able to share information, share experience and lessons, and think together as to how we move forward next 30 years. So that's the sort of the background that I wanted to share with you before we come to the scene setting. Scene setting, it's a straightforward job here. So we just want to share with you the objective of the conference, which basically means why the synergy matters. Why synergy, synergetic action between climate and SDG matters. For you, for me, and for them. So they're working on SDG, they're working on climate action, but they're looking at both at the same time. So we want to hear from them why it matters. And then we also want to hear from them, what do you expect from this conference? So what's the expectation for this conference? Next 2 days, but also in the future. Very straightforward, I think. So with this introduction, I would like to introduce my first panelist. My first panelist is the Hitomi. So over to you, Hitomi. So why it matters for you? And maybe you can explain a little bit about what you're doing on the SDGs, climate action, and tell us. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Takada. Hello, everyone. My name is Hitomi Shimizu from Shimokawa Town. Our town is a very small-scaled municipality with a population of around 3,000 people. We are far from the urban areas, but rich in nature, with about 90% of our land area covered in woods. The bitter cold gifts us with diamond dust and powder snow, like Hakuba village. the population decreasing, we have been tackling SDGs and the climate change to pass the town on to the next generation in a very good state. Right now, we live in a world full of global issues like the Paris Agreement and the SDGs. To tackle these large-scale issues, it is crucial to build up small efforts one by one, just like us. As a small-scale municipality, we have been tackling climate change and the SDGs vigorously. Shimokawa is well known of our challenge to become a sustainable community, being forest-centered, starting by making a cyclical forest management system. This is a 60-year cycle of planting, cutting woods, 50 hectares of woods every year. This is done to pass the forest down also to the next generation. However, from the perspective of one that became a government official in Shimokawa Town to its utilization of SDGs, I am currently facing many issues that small-scale municipalities have, going through the hardships. In this conference, we aim to take bold action to solve worldwide issues like climate change, Paris Agreement, and SDGs, to become triggers through partnerships between actors and throughout knowledge sharing. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll come back with some questions later on. Okay. All right. So let's go to Suzuka. Present the youth. So tell us a little bit about what you think.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Suzuka Nakamura, and a climate activist. And maybe why I was invited here, I imagine, and as a youth and as a woman, as maybe the people who live in the local area. But before that, I want to say that with what we expect from this meeting is not to suggest climate actions with greenwashes, and we are not diverse here, especially in race, region, or ethnic, like those things. And that is why we need to be aware of our privilege and use our imagination and take action at the local level, I think. And what lives are being lost due to climate change now, especially in Europe now. So yeah, all over the world, of course. And the energy we use change. Will coal-fired power generation be phased out by 2030 in Japan? And will investment in and use of fossil fuels stop? And what kind of society will young people live in? And what kind of jobs will they get in the future? So I imagine of these questions, and this is just a place to start, I think. And it is necessary for all of you to go out of this place and implement these issues in your own countries and own cities, I think, and own communities. And I would be happy if this meeting could be an opportunity for people who gather here to share the same sense of climate crisis, right? And to think about synergies and co-benefits, which we are not the only stakeholders. Yeah, thank you.
I think you pointed out a very important point of just, inclusive, equitable transition. So it cannot be just for us. Okay? It has to be for everybody, including intergenerational justice. So I think you are really pointing at a very important point, including diversity issues. So thank you very much. Everyone, over to you.
Thank you very much. I think the morning was somewhat disappointing when we heard that the Sustainable Development Goals will not be achieved by 2030, but by 2065. That explains why we really need to ramp up and why we need synergy on that account. Let's remember that both these Sustainable Development Goals and Paris Agreements were endorsed by all the 192 governments in 2015 alone. One in September 2015, other in December 2015. And we really need to work, as a matter of fact, collectively, and then perhaps I think try to expedite. Unfortunately, COVID has actually, really affected the whole world. And now, of course, there was also a reference about how the Ukraine war is affecting the global economy and also dampening the spirits of achieving both the targets in that sense. I particularly would like to say that what we have been doing in India, which is very, very important because we have 1.4 billion population, and we have to really manage that. Friends, I would like to underscore and say that at COP26 in Glasgow, our Prime Minister presented the agenda for the country to combat climate change. He announced that by 2030, the country would strive to achieve 500 gigawatt of installed electricity capacity from non-fossil fuel sources, reducing the total projected carbon emission by additional 1 billion tons, reducing the carbon intensity of the economy by less than 45%. And lastly, the country would achieve net zero emissions by 2070. These are the commitments which the country is following very strictly. But let me tell you, our journey did not start in this regard only after 2015. In fact, the Government of India launched National Action Plan on Climate Change on 30th June 2008. We outlined 8 national missions on climate change in the country. One is a national solar mission, national mission on enhanced energy efficiency, national mission on sustainable habitat, national water mission, national mission for sustaining the Himalayan ecosystem, national mission for a green India, national mission for sustainable agriculture, and national mission on strategic knowledge for climate change. I am particularly mentioning all these because the whole Government of India, the different ministries stand committed to do as much as we can because, as a matter of fact, this is a commitment to the entire world. Humanity has always progressed when it has collectively risen to its obligation to the world and responsibility to the future. And we in India stand committed to implement both the Paris Declaration on Climate Change as well as SDGs. I would like to just stop by saying that the 2 things which are very important for developing country like India, one is the technology, other is the finance. And we hope that the developed world will fulfill its financing commitments both for development and climate change. And the technology facilitation mechanism should also turn technology and innovation into an effective instrument for global public good, not just private returns. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I think, you talked about, really determined leadership. So this is where, the country like India is actually demonstrating how the determined leadership at the national level can actually change the course. So you have raised, 6 specific examples, started touching upon how you can actually transform it, including technology and finance. We can come back to that in the second round as to how we can actually push things further. Let's move on to the next panelist. So Yumiko, over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much. But please allow me to speak in Japanese. It is okay? Thank you very much. Sorry for both sides. So, 気候変動を代表するような環境問題っていうのは、 当然国境というバンダリーがなくて、一つの企業や一つのセクターとかいうことではなく、産官学のあらゆるセクターがグローバルに同じ目標を持ってコラボレーションしなければ実現できません。そして生活者まで落とし込んだような社会の重要性であったり行動変容というものが社会全体で抜本的な変革が必要になっているというのが今の状態です。SDGs でビジョン2050というものをビジョンと掲げておりますけれども、90億人以上が地球の限界の範囲内で真に豊かに生きられる社会、こういうふうに歌ってるわけですけれども、現行の社会システムの中では実現できないと思っています。そうした意味では社会全体の抜本的な変化が必要となって、そこに企業自身がマインドセットを大転換する必要があるということになります。で、企業はこれまでもそうしてきましたように、困難な問題に直面したときに、新たな技術を開発したり、新たな価値を生み出すということで社会に貢献してまいりました。技術の開発におきましては、基礎となる科学の力も必要です。また、新しい技術は人類にとって新しい利用、それから需要のためにも、いわゆる人文社会系のアカデミアの力も必要になります。そうした新しいサイエンスと技術とイノベーションを起こす、これで問題を解決していくということで、その中核の一つを企業が担っていると認識しています。現在の課題は非常に複雑で、トレードオフが生じると言われるようになっておりますけれども、多様なステークホルダーの知恵、新たな技術で克服する機会があると信じています。持続可能な社会づくりに貢献できるということで、企業そのものの価値も高まってまいります。私はプライベートカンパニー富士通というところから来ておりますけれども、富士通でも手掛けておるわけですが、重要な技術の一つにコンピューティング技術があります。シナジーを強化する、あるいはトレードオフを最小化するというためには、施している施策の効果を検証して、そして施策に伴うようなトレードオフの発生や、将来のリスク、そういったものを分析したり予見するということは非常に重要な要素になりまして、そこにコンピューティングパワーが求められます。つまり、関連する多様なデータを蓄積し、その関係性をシミュレーションしながら、明らかにしながら、最適な施策の検討につなげることが可能になると思っています。データの収集、あるいは共有には、それを促す仕組み作りであったり、それからそのための国際機関、政府、アカデミア、産業界、それぞれの共同の下で、そういったことを実現していくものだと思っております。以上です。
Thank you. I think some estimates say that about 5 to 10% of the global GDP may be needed to address SDGs and climate action at the same time. Then obviously fundamentally important for data and innovation. It's very clear, and the power of the business would have to. But at the same time, like U-Thant and Suzuka also pointed out, the cause and the effects are a little different here in that, so I think, the impacts of climate action, the impacts of what we do, and you mentioned about trade-off as well, occurs in a variety of different ways, depending on where you stand and where you live and where you sort of, are located in the different type of stakeholder groups. So I think it's going to be very important that we work on the globally coordinated synergetic actions and then try to leverage power of all stakeholders, including private sector. So thank you very much, pointing out a very important point. Now, let me go to Yu-Jan.
Afternoon, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be here today. In terms of why we should pursue synergies, my colleagues and I often talk about this. It's like a buy one, get one free promotion deal you can find in the supermarkets. It's even better. If you invest in climate action, you get multiple SDGs, targets, indicators achieved. And it's about the way how we can use our limited resources effectively and efficiently. So I think it's a must, and it's very important more than ever before now, because we are still trying to recover from the COVID-19 pandemic. So, as we all know, the pandemic has led to dramatic impacts to our efforts to achieve the SDGs. And this recovery spending is such an important opportunity to reset a new course for the sustainability of our societies. And green recovery could cut 25% of 2030 emissions. And this will bring the world closer to meeting the global goals of the Paris Agreement on climate change. And at the same time, it will enable building back better, driving some economic growth, create jobs, and bring significant environmental and social benefits, especially if we invest in key sectors like clean energy, sustainable mobility, sustainable infrastructure, connectivity, and natural capital. And a lot of countries have already included this green investment in their recovery plans. For example, 1/3 of the French recovery plan is allocated to green measures, including energy efficiency upgrades for public and private buildings. And Pakistan is doing this green recovery investments in the reforestation sector to create jobs. And in Poland, 20% of the plan funding is dedicated to the green smart mobility, which centers around promoting electric vehicles. And some countries like Korea and the European Union, they have packaged a wide range of green investments into Green Deal. For example, Korean Green New Deal focuses on renewable energy, green infrastructure, with an aim to create nearly 2 million jobs by 2025. And these list of countries are not exhaustive at all. We just heard from one of our panelists about the efforts of India, and I'm pretty sure Japan is doing a lot of activities for this. So I would like to stress that if carefully designed, these measures can bring both economic and environmental and social benefits.
Thank you very much. I think clearly co-benefit is probably the biggest sort of positive argument that we could make why we have to be working on this energy production. But so long as, of course, we can manage trade-off very well. Thank you very much. Lynn, over to you.
Hi, thank you. And I'm sorry that I'm not there in person. As you introduced my title, I'm working with the International Institute for Sustainable Development in a program called Tracking Progress, where we use data as a tool for helping to guide a sustainable development policy. And so a key element for thinking about synergies in data is really how can we move from a short-term to a long-term perspective in how we're valuing resources. So when we look at our resources, do we have a short-term, single-purpose, limited use perspective, in which case we're really not thinking about their real contribution to society. And as part of the Secretary General's Our Common Agenda, there's a current consideration of how to construct complementary measures to GDP. As the Secretary General stated in his opening address to the Stockholm Plus 50 conference last month, when we destroy forests, overfish, or burn coal, we are increasing gross domestic product. And it's time to change an accounting system that counts the destruction of the planet as if it was the production of richnesses. So decision-making that focuses on GDP tends to be biased towards the short term. It's overly concerned with what happens to the market economy, and it's not concerned enough about the consequences of economic growth on the determinants of well-being. So by contrast, a comprehensive measurement of national wealth that would take into account the sum of human, natural, social, produced, and financial capital includes the key elements for the synergies that we've all come here to discuss at this meeting. Thank you.
Okay, we started a little late, so we may have to wrap up a little quickly here. So I think I can give you only 1.5 minutes in the next round, unfortunately. So if you can. So let's limit to this one here. So what's your expectation for this conference? Right, basically, next 2 days, today and tomorrow, what would you like to see this conference is focused on and deliver? And then you can link that one to the, little sort of future steps here. So by having this conference, what do you expect that things will change or can actually have positive impact in terms of our actions next sort of 3, 5, 10 years? So that's a sort of, framing of the next round. Are you up for challenge, Tommy? Go ahead.
Okay, due to the time limit, I'm gonna make it brief. But especially for governments and local governments, the silo organization has been and is still a really big issue. And especially since small-scale municipalities are suffering from labor shortage, the silos are a big resort of streamlining the workflow. But we must find new ways to break down the silos for inclusive and a sustainable community or society. And Shimoka Town has created our version of the SDGs, and we have also made indicators for follow-up and review. As everyone has pointed out, the data is needed right now. But since local governments, as Ms. Lin has said, that the bias toward the short-term outcome is right now a big issue. And local governments are basically short-term, so that's a big issue for us. So given this opportunity, we really look forward to new partnerships with many stakeholders, aiming to solve global issues with us from the local level, to become a more sustainable town, a more sustainable society.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very clear. Local solutions, partnerships to tackle global challenges. Thank you very much. Suzuka, over to you.
Yeah. So I think. So I wanted to mention about how to achieve the sustainable society. So I wanted to mention I would like to mention how we can bring representatives of all stakeholders and on board. But before considering this question, we should consider who the stakeholders are. And needless to say, this stakeholder is not only composed of representatives of the majority, right? So, and I think about MAPA, the most affected people and area, and those means like intersectionality. We have to consider about it, and I want to suggest that 2 points of this. 2 points. So first is providing fair and equal opportunities to speak for the speakers and stakeholders. And the second is the political leaders and the sectors to implement the suggestions and implement the climate act now. and I wanted to mention it about it, and not only, I'm sorry. Not only, I'm sorry. Not only communication, and I wanted to say loudly that not only communication opportunities to them, but to the stakeholders, but also financial support and norms that don't discriminate against them, against MAPA on the spot are required, I think. I think that the government must take the initiative to support them. of course. And finally, if the suggestions are not actually implemented, so they are meaningless. We don't need empty promises and shame climate actions. We don't see. We have seen empty promises and greenwashes for these years. I think that's enough for us. So please, just act as soon as possible in the line now. I think.
Thank you very much. And agree, commitment is not enough. It has to be delivered. And of course, diversity. So we have to have enhanced and a meaningful engagement of all stakeholders. So completely agree. Thank you very much. Kruwa?
I think for us in India, SDG goals are very significantly important because, as the goal 1 says, elimination of extreme poverty is one goal which, as a matter of fact, is so very critically important. The second one, which highlights the need for food security, also equally very important. I would say we have tried to achieve some of the goals significantly during the last about 7-8 years, particularly goal 6 relating to water and sanitation, where we have made marvelous progress. But if I may just say, ambitions for this conference is very important. And I would like to say that we really need to develop synergy for more ambitious national climate action plans, known as what we call NDCs, and long-term strategies as agreed at the UN Climate Change Conference in Glasgow last year. We are meeting again in, I would say, November 27 in Egypt to concretize those efforts. We also need to create synergy for more climate action this decade if we are to achieve carbon neutrality by 2050 and ultimately the 1.5 degree goal. I only would like to underscore, and that is that if we have to achieve the carbon neutrality goal by 2050, then the developed world must achieve its goal by 2030, and perhaps China by 2040. And then perhaps I think India can really consider bringing its goal down from 2070 to 2050 if we have to really achieve the goal overall, perhaps I think. And lastly, I would say achieving SDG ambition benchmarks grounded in the 17 SDGs and the 10 principles of the UN Global Compact. They are also very, very important. By translating the ambition level of the SDGs into concrete aspirations and for businesses, these benchmarks challenge organizations to set more ambitious goals. Business as usual cannot achieve them. We really have to change the things. And I would like to conclude by saying what I said in my initial remarks. Technology and finance are very important, where we do need for countries, developing countries, very especially Africa and some of the South Asian countries, both finance and technology, where the developed world must come up with greater help. I would like to also highlight that before we adopted 17 goals, we had the Addis Ababa Conference on Finance, if you recall. In Addis Ababa Conference, we need to implement some of that what was agreed in the Addis Ababa Conference. At the same time, what was agreed for the mobility, the kind of financing, perhaps I think we really have to achieve that. Without that, perhaps I think we will not be able to make headway. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I entirely agree. We have to continue to raise ambitions. Otherwise, we'll never be able to achieve what we said we would be able to achieve. This is God's point. Commitment is not enough. We have to deliver on that. Thank you very much. Okay, Yumiko, please.
ありがとうございます。大きく2点、まず産業界の立場として、今までの生産して使って廃棄してというようなリニアな垂直モデルはもうこれからはなくなって循環型の社会に変わっていくというふうな流れになるわけですけど、リニアのケースっていう時にはそれぞれのプレイヤー産業界が判断していたわけですけれども、 サーキュラーエコノミーの社会においては、それぞれのインダストリーごと、ではなくて、それぞれが知見を共有して、そして共同しなければ実現できないということで、それぞれの協力関係で、産業界としては社会の方を変えていかなければいけないと思っています。一方で生活者の視点で言いますと、生産消費パターンを改善していくっていう中で、先ほどもお話出ましたけれども、やはり規制的なアプローチをするだとか、市場のメカニズムを利用するっていうような話になったときに、やはり重要なのがエビデンスベースで物事を見ていて、エビデンスベースで示していくことによって、消費者によるサステナビリティに対する感度、行動変容がやっぱり変えられると思っています。で、そういう意味で言いますと、正しい情報を、そしてあるべき未来はこういうものだということを明確に示しながら、それこそこういったリアルなシンポジウム、あるいはウェビナーを通して皆さんに説明していくとか、対象もですね、日本でいうと初等中等教育の小学校の時代のあたりから、そして高齢者まであらゆる層に対して丁寧な説明をしていくことで社会を変えていくということが重要だと思います。そして今、私の視点で言うと、デジタルを駆使してそれは非常にやりやすくなっているということもあると思いますので、そういう形でこれから進んでいくといいなと思っています。
Hi, thank you very much, Yumiko. It's really very important point. Circular means that everything is connected. So it's going to be very challenging if we exclude some part of it, and the digitalization, absolutely. This is one of the things that we have to work on. So thank you very much.
Well, achieving the climate goal and SDGs is not an easy task, and we need strong strategies, we need strong policies, strong finance, technologies, and to do this, strong capacities of all stakeholders is very important. And I think the first step of capacity building is knowledge. Knowledge does not always lead to actions, but oftentimes it is prerequisite of actions. So I think we need to know more about the linkages, synergies, and trade-offs. And not only that, we need to learn more about the systems thinking, nexus approaches to change our mindsets and attitudes. And in addition to knowledge, we also need to share our experiences, learn from each other. And I think that's why this Synergy conference here in Tokyo is such a valuable and meaningful place as a platform to share our knowledge and experiences and learn from each other.
Thank you very much. Lynn?
Yeah, and picking up on the last speaker, I think the experiences and learning from each other is so important. And I just want to share one example from some work that my colleagues at ISD's Global Subsidies Initiative have been doing on removing fossil fuel subsidies, which is an issue that's just at the heart of the SDGs because they're the just transition issues. It's addressing climate change, but big implications for the use of energy, the poverty. It touches so many of the SDGs, and my colleagues have found, trying to learn from other cases for different situations that in many cases the existing policies haven't been targeted well. So one of the lessons is to target them well. Another lesson is to ensure once you have introduced a policy, collect data to be sure that your policy is reaching the group that you really wanted to reach. Bringing the public on board with the policy's objective is a really big issue because, I think we can all think of cases where governments tried to reduce subsidies and failed rather miserably and sometimes violently. But for every case that's failed, there have been many cases that have succeeded. So learning from those success stories. And then also thinking about timing. Timing has been really important for those cases that have been important or that have been successful. But I think in learning about these examples, looking at it, we see that all the objectives of growing our economies, overcoming poverty, ensuring access to energy, water, food, housing for all, protecting the environment and climate means that we have to be taking so many different things into account. So looking for these examples of where that's happened can really be helpful and inspiring for us.
Thank you very much. Well, I can continue more, but I think we are coming closer to the end of the session. So let me share with you my expectations. My expectation is that to learn what's happening, to learn from each one of you who is doing what, so we'll be able to sort of use some of the knowledges to actually make our action more effective. But also by learning, which is my second expectation, is that I think we probably will start seeing some gaps, because ambition is very high, right? Really high. So in order for us to get to this very high ambition, I think we may have to think about something out of the box, something that we don't have right now. Maybe it's a new concept, maybe new integrated approaches. I don't know. But I think this is something that I would like to reflect on what is needed to get to this highest level of ambition that we are actually sort of collectively setting up. And if we can do that, which is my third expectation, is that we hope that we'll be able to sort of use these knowledges gained during the conference and beyond to inform really decision-making processes at the United Nations. So next year, there's going to be a SDG summit. So it will be a global stocktake of the progress toward Paris Agreement next year as well. So there will be a lot more opportunities to be able to influence on the course of actions through the intergovernmental processes. This is where United Nations Secretariat can actually help the advance of discussions moving forward. So these are some of sort of my personal expectations, but I'd like to really thank all the panelists and also ask you, our audience, to join me in thanking by clapping a hand to the panelists. So with this, I'd like to conclude this session. Thank you very much, and my apology for overtime 5 minutes, but we started a little late.